That's okay.
Almost 20 attendees now, uh, which is very good, and we're going to start very soon. Let's just give people, 3 more minutes to come. Maybe some of them will be a little bit late. So we'll start at 3:05. So we can start. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. I would like to greet you in the name of the Education, Development and Therapy Commission. My name is Livia Kroflin. I'm the current president of the commission. And this today is already the 8th webinar in our series of webinars called What a Puppet Can Do, Applied Puppetry in Theory and Practice. It is also the last before the UNIMA Congress in Korea. Our today's presenter is Wendy Passmore-Godfrey, and the title of today's webinar is Learning STEM Curriculum Through Puppetry. Now, this sounds really interesting. After the presentation, there will be time for questions and answers. Wendy will inform us about the our conference that we have been preparing. And okay, that's from me for now. I'm going to disappear now. Wendy, the floor is yours.
Over. The floor is mine. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Livia, for organizing this. It's really a pleasure. I know some of you, so it's nice to see you again. Yes, you've read my bio, and you know who I am as the founding director, the artistic director, the executive director of WP Puppet Theatre Society, based in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, on Treaty 7 land, which we acknowledge today, and Métis regions 5 and 6. So you know that I am doing many things, and including our View from the Inside program, which is on promoting positive mental health. And you know that I'm doing performances, and I teach hundreds and thousands of hours of workshops. And I'm very pleased to be here today. I'm going to share my screen here, and there I am in person in photo. So I've had the pleasure of performing in Korea actually a couple times. We were just chatting about that, and I highly recommend it as a lovely country with lots of friendly people. So some of the things that I'm working on, the Puppet Power Conference, which you have been hearing about, and I am just now getting together the presentations and really looking forward to the theme of looking at immigration through the lens of puppetry, and finding out what wonderful work is happening in this world, in this tangled subject. One of the other projects I have is Baxter and Bird, and it kind of links to today's topic on learning curriculum through STEM, because it is an example of using puppetry to teach STEM principles. I have been a learning through the arts facilitator since it was first introduced in Canada in about mid-1990s. And what that means is that I've been influenced by educators such as Howard Gardner and Sir Ken Robinson, Elliot Eisner, and the Reggio Children's Network and approach, and learned much of what I know about teaching through teachers. So the programs that I'm going to talk about today, the 3 that I'm going to talk about today, have all been tested with children and in the classroom. And I'm going to talk about how we can integrate puppetry into a STEM curriculum. And STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. And I love trying to integrate these 2 things, because lots of times teachers will think, well, puppets are great with literature, with books, we can tell stories, and that's self-evident and very common. And so making links to STEM curriculum kind of catches them by surprise. So we're going to go through, as I said, 3 different projects, and make sure we have time for questions afterwards. And I'm working with students who are about 6 to 12 years old. So STEM and STEAM, STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, very important. because only 25% of these STEM jobs in Canada are held by women, and even less who are Black and Indigenous or living remotely. But STEAM is important, where we add art, because it ensures that learners have critical and problem thinking skills that are embedded in art in order to come up with the innovative and creative solutions that we need. Georgette Yackman is an engineering and technology teacher and founding researcher who coined this term STEM, or STEAM educational framework. And there's lots and lots of research about it and pedagogy and curriculum development. But I am not an expert, so instead I really do want to just share my projects that, as I say, are tested in classrooms and have stood the test of glue and paint and paper and school bells and coded children and shy children, the kid under the table, and the loving, hugging kid who has a cold. So you could say, says Georgette Yackman, that STEM is what and how, and STEAM is who and why. As we know, puppetry is such an umbrella for all sorts of learning outcomes, and these are all listed on the side here: creativity, collaboration, communication, critical thinking, all of those wonderful things. Plus, we can integrate the STEM areas, plus we can integrate wellness, and plus we can, of course, have arts and drama by default. In fact, I was teaching at one school and who was a learning through the arts school, and the principal said, by the end of the year, I don't know what subject, I don't want the students to know what subject they are learning, because I would like it to be all embedded together. I thought that was pretty cool. So when I talk to teachers and anyone who will listen, I talk about the benefits of puppets in the classroom. It's not a hard sell, but they do need specific curriculum links because their school year is so tight for time. So we need to do that curriculum linking that I'm going to talk about. So all of these wonderful things that happen in the classroom, but the kids basically think they're having fun, and we all are. I'm going to share a project in science, in math, and in social studies. And social studies is sort of history and geography in Canada. We've got different curriculums around the world, I'm sure. So in the science one, I'm going to talk about composting, which is also going to link to building things, oral storytelling, and cultural practices. In math, I'm going to talk about 2 and 3D geometry, plus math, word problems. And in social studies project, I'm going to talk about people in history and light and shadow and writing conversations. And perhaps you recognize curriculum from your areas in here as well. So the first one is compostable puppets. Who could believe that a puppet is made out of a carrot? But here we get the students to practice their identification skills and their classification skills as they select what they need to have for their puppet. And they are supposed to be compostable, so straw and plant material and pine cones and feathers and zucchinis and fur and eggshells and potatoes and carrots and peas and tea bags and seeds and beans would all be viable for making their puppets. So of course, we do need to define what composition and decomposition is. It's when it changes from one state to another, and when it rots or putrefies or spoils or molds, and it's often quite stinky. And then, but we don't want to put the children off of the science, so we think about how does this happen with bacteria and fungi and insects and worms and sunlight. Of course, some of our Canadian classrooms actually do have composting worms in their compost bin, and so that's always a treat to see those. And we also need to talk about identifying what goes where. In Calgary here, we have a bin system where we have a compost bin, and we need to put certain stuff there, and then we have a recycling bin, and we have stuff goes there, and then we have a garbage bin and stuff goes there. And I don't think that Canada is unique, and I'm not even sure that we're ahead of the rest of the world in our systems. But children do need to learn and be encouraged on what goes where. And then we also can talk about what rate of composting happens. So wire does break down, it rusts and it breaks down, but it takes time, for example. So the rules of my puppet making game are that your puppet needs to have one moving part and it needs to have eyes. And this teacher that I was doing this project with, she wanted the kids to make animals of Alberta. So if you look very closely at some of these pictures, you might just recognize a rabbit or a wolf. So one of the first issues that the kids run into is, how do I attach stuff? Because hot glue is not going to work, tape is not going to work, and neither is glue. So they need to be quite the engineers to figure out how they can use toothpicks or twigs or twine or wire. And one child even brought a baggie of royal icing to class to try to put his puppet together. And we had royal icing everywhere in the classroom. But luckily it's edible and it's quite sweet and fun to eat. So after this, because I'm a firm believer in having the art project of puppetry together with the drama project, otherwise you've just made a nice, pretty thing, sculpture. So next what we're going to do is use these puppets and create and perform tall tale skits based on gardening, with stretching and bending and exaggerating in a very fun way. I usually give them some prompts on how to write their scripts. And I suggest that they just do sort of 9 lines, work with a partner and do like a little 9-line micro script with using their exaggerations and their similes and their metaphors and lots of descriptive language. And the prompts might be something like, your plants grow better when you play ABBA songs, or it's raining cats and dogs and it flattens your garden. There's lots of wet fur as well. Or a spaceship has landed in your garden and everything is glowing purple. So then we watch their plays, and I didn't bring any video or anything because I know video isn't one of EDT's favorite things to play in these presentations, but they are very hilarious. And then we go further with this this project, and I just want to say I apologize if this is uncomfortable for anybody, this next section, and this is something that the teachers would also want to check with their parents and with their children, because what we're going to do next is the puppet is decomposing. And so it's time to write an obituary or a biography, you could say. And so the students write up what they want to say. They maybe divide the vegetable's life into 4 sections, and they write a bit of information for each part: their childhood, their teenage, their adult, their senior. It is important to understand someone's life through their growth and development from birth to death. And they can talk about specific experiences that might have helped to shape that life of that vegetable that is now decomposing. But what's interesting here too is that they can choose to write in 2 different points of view. They can choose to write about the character that was in their story, so the gardener that had trouble with her goats, or they can choose to write about the vegetable that played the part of the character. Like, one minute I was lying with the other potatoes at the grocery store, and then I was on stage performing. And so it's kind of an interesting little mind bender, as the students need to understand the different points of view and scenarios there. So then we hold a little photo shoot, and we put the little actors to rest with great ceremony in the compost bin. and students present their obituaries. And we even invented a shroud. There was a boy who'd brought in a pumpkin, and who knew, but pumpkins decompose a lot faster than other vegetables. And so it was actually literally dripping by the time we got to this point. So we invented a paper towel shroud. And then what they could do, it just goes on as far as your imagination can lead it. You could study the funeral traditions of the world. So you could think about how in different cultures have different ways of honoring their past folks, and they could be buried together with certain things that are special to them. And by studying these funeral practices, perhaps we can start to build some acceptance and some diversity understanding in the classroom of different people's backgrounds and ethnicities. And we can possibly even, if the teachers are ready for it, to handle any sort of triggers, we can discuss some health and wellness, and bring this into the classroom as well. So after this part, or if you skip it and you go straight to composting, teachers have buried their puppets in some place in the school grounds, and then they go back later and they dig them up, and they become archaeologists, and they see what things have composted and what things haven't. That plastic fork that was buried with the puppet who was perhaps a warrior of some kind. The plastic fork has not decomposed, but the potato warrior has decomposed. And so that is how that whole composting workshop, that is definitely linked to STEM curriculum, that's how that works. So if you have any questions, I totally encourage you to write them into that Q&A section or Q&R section, and we'll answer them at the end of the show. And I'd love to have your feedback and comments on this too, and find out if you've done anything like it before in your own work, or if you have any words of warning for me. This is how I've learned how to teach things, is I've learned everything I know from teachers on the spot. And it's a great way to learn. So take a breath. Next, what we're going to do is work with our math puppets. And this basic puppet is one I've used for many projects. It's made from 2 and 3D geometric shapes, from cones and cylinders and rectangular prisms and pyramids, triangle-based pyramids. And here's a couple of other things that I've used this puppet for. A really nice, I had a box of crayons, all shiny, straight and new. I lent a friend one crayon, and oops, it broke in 2. So that whole working in the classroom, getting kids to share, getting kids to be sympathetic or empathetic to each other, getting them to be friends, dealing with friendship. If anyone's ever been in the classroom and the little kids, oh, it's not my friend anymore. So there's a lot of discussion that goes on with that. I just finished a 5-week residency at a school where there was kindergarten up to grade 5, and 550 children, and we made 550 puppets. And there was an awful lot of talk about friendship. So that's a really nice little poem to spur that kind of conversation. And then this book, My Many Colored Days, is one of my favorite ones. It talks about feelings and how they're expressed, and how they're expressed metaphorically, which lends itself right to puppets. And we've also used this puppet to act out weather proverbs, because weather is in the Alberta curriculum. But today what we're going to do is think about math. So thinking about these word problems that students need to solve. And it's it's not really fair for the students who are just learning English because they now need to understand both math, which they might be really, really good at, and English, which is one of the world's most horrible languages to learn, apparently. So, so sometimes it's fun just to act it out as a piece of drama. So in science class, Sarah needed 8 test tubes for 3 different experiments. And the first experiment required 2 test tubes, and the other experiments required the same, like, et cetera, et cetera. And so what the students need to do is they need to read through the problem and then solve the problem and then act it out. So obviously this is a slow way to learn math, but what I'm hoping is that it will kind of kickstart the engagement in math, the excitement in math, and just keep them going. So by the way, the answer to the first question is that you need 8 test tubes. And then the second question is a bit more complicated because it's more of a numberless word problem. So the students need to make some assumptions, which is also part of a math curriculum. And answers might be different. So they get the idea that you can have a best guess and then other ones that are maybe not as reasonable of a guess. And so there's not always a black and white answer. Generally, though, we're going to say that this equals 96 hours. And it also means that you have to show your work to tell the teacher how you came up with that answer. So I'm just going to run through these diagrams really quickly because this is what I use to teach the kids how to make these basic shapes. And I have been told by teachers that they prefer this way of making their 2 and 3D geometric shapes compared to those printed nets that you can have where you're sort of making tiny little shapes and trying to get photocopy paper to glue together and hold its shape. So here we are just making some basic shapes. And I usually tell people, yes, it is missing a face at the end. It's missing that triangle face, but that's okay because you're going to make a puppet face. So here we have a rectangle, a 2D shape, a rectangle that turns into a triangular prism. And we have circles that turn into cylinders and or into cones rather, and another rectangle that turns into a cylinder. Perhaps you have to cast your minds back to when you learned your math, but these basic shapes turn into things. And what's interesting that what happens is that they need to transpose the person or the animal that they're trying to make into a geometric shape. So this is a matter of observation and deduction. They need to ask the question, what basic shape does the animal's head or body remind you of? And so they're sort of thinking through. So if you're doing an elephant, perhaps, what shape does the elephant's body remind you of? Is it a cylinder, or is the head a triangular prism? And so there's a really interesting mental process to do that transposition. And here we have a rectangle that turns into a rectangular prism. And I just keep using the vocabulary to reinforce the learning. We have a square that turns into a cube, and the method of figuring out how to get it square in the first place if you don't have a ruler. And a cone turning into a scoop of ice cream that turns into an ice cream cone. It's usually what I say. And this is a lovely shape, a triangle-based pyramid. And here's some of the creatures that we have made in the past with those geometric shapes. And when we've artified the geometric shapes, so cut into them or curled them or made extra paper art onto them, you can see that on that orange puppet with the big yellow beak, we have got a triangular prism. And the blue puppet with the fringes at the end is basically a cylinder. So we really reinforce those math shapes with this project. And then here's a bunch more pictures that we've made. Oh, my anglerfish is hiding behind the other picture there, but you kind of get the sense of this. Anglerfishes are very popular with the children. They just love the scariness of an anglerfish. But here's a bunch of other ones that we have made. Okay, so we have, I think, probably about another 10 minutes here for me to finish up. And if you have any questions, just jot them down and we'll talk about it at the end here. So we're now moving to our social studies curriculum. And this is something that's in the Alberta curriculum. We are going to talk about people in history. So in Calgary here, in Alberta here, we study the contributions and perspectives of diverse Albertans over time. And we just have a new curriculum, which has many problems with it. But this part isn't the problem, but it does have sort of an overarching Indigenous content to it. So almost every lesson that the teachers can do, they can integrate in some Indigenous ways of knowing. And so this history of Alberta definitely lends itself to this part of the curriculum. This is an archival picture from our local museum, and it's a picture of a couple of nurses who are taking a break. And we can see in the background, you can see some teepees back there, as well as some tents. This is outside the big general hospital, which is not standing anymore. They demolished it a bunch of years ago, and now it's a lovely big park. So we ask about, who are the people in the picture? Where are they? Where was the picture taken? When was the picture taken? More importantly, what might these two nurses be saying to each other? How would they talk to each other? Are they friends? Are they not friends? Formally, informally? What time period lends how they talk to each other? How are they feeling? And what will happen next? So this is a shadow puppet workshop, and so they are going to make shadow puppets. So when the students get their picture, the first thing they need to decide is who are the characters in the picture, and maybe just do a quick little storyboard of what they're going to do. They need to decide whether it's a close-up, a head-only shot, or a far shot, a full body, because shadow puppetry, of course, has a lot of video and film technique. And I think people even speculate that the early movie makers took a lot of their inspiration from shadow puppetry. And they draw their character on their black paper or whatever color, actually, because it doesn't matter, because it's a shadow puppet. And they draw it big so that they can actually cut it out. I love this photo of this little girl because it's like, yeah, I'm going to cut that moose out. I'm going to, she's not, but she's very keen to do so. The kids are going to decide, and we're going to learn about making a moving part on a shadow puppet and decide what part is opaque and what part is transparent and what part is translucent. And of course, there we have all those different science words coming into play. And we talk about silhouette and how it has to be very interesting silhouette and not just a box or something, which a rectangle, which doesn't make a very interesting shadow puppet. This moose will make a very interesting shadow puppet if this little girl manages to cut it out. And then we move into the actual history part of the workshop, where we are now making a bit of a microscript here, or figuring out how to tell the story as just an oral storytelling. So really not writing word for word, not really memorizing a script, but just basically trying to act out the scenario. So this particular picture is a real picture. Buffalo Day hand-reared some moose and hauled mail back and forth across Alberta with his his mooses. So this script might start with the driver saying in a very determined way, "Dr. Jonathan doesn't think I can get my moose sleigh to High Prairie in just 1 hour to deliver this medicine. I'll show him." That might be the opening line for this little script. So, one of the first things is to actually think about names and where how names are influenced by where they're from, and think about the time period of when the picture happened. And so learning a little bit about how names come, how people were typically named after royalty or names in the Bible, and not the modern names who are named after pop culture like Darth or Phoenix, and how they would speak to each other with more formal Mr. and Mrs. Now this one is a little bit of an offshoot from what I was just talking about. Well, actually, no, it's not. It's just another theme within that sort of photographic background. I think what I forgot to mention was that we actually show the background, project the background as our light source for the shadow puppets. And so the kids are making the puppets and they're performing them in front of the black and white picture or this colored picture that is projected as the light source for the shadow puppets. But this offshoot sort of workshop or different theme sort of workshop is too fun not to mention. Tintomaris in Nova Scotia in Eastern Canada are noisy parades, and it is part of the Alberta curriculum that links to them studying different parts of Canada. And so we have the kids make the different things that are in the parade in the Tintomari, and they love just making lots of noise with their puppets as well. This is the Acadian flag that's being painted on the house. So once again, just to be clear, we would project this picture of this house with the gold star and the different colors, and then the black and white puppets would perform in front of it. And they would, as I said, make up different scripts. So how do they talk, and what do they say? And what I found in the past is that it's really easy for kids to just sort of do an info dump. They go to the internet, they look up some information, they studiously write it all down, and then they dump it into a performance. By making them do a script and making them think about back and forth and think about direct and indirect information and think about the characters, it really tests what they know and how well they know it. So they're not just parroting something off of the internet. They are actually getting into the characters. And we actually had a little competition in the Tintomari workshop where we would see how many pieces of direct and indirect information the students could get. So we can tell, bonjour means that they're French, and August 15th means that that's when the festival happens, and crab pots means that it's by the ocean. And so instead of having to say, this story takes place on August the 15th in Nova Scotia, we can learn that with those pieces of indirect information. And this is part of the whole writing and storytelling curriculum that the kids have to go through. I found that students are pretty good at imaginary and fantasy creatures, and what is actually hard for them is reality. And so I think that lots of times we make puppet projects that are fantasy, but it really is doing them a bit of a disservice because they're really, they don't know that their meat actually comes from an animal. They think it's on a plastic plate or the reality of things. That's my experience anyway. And here's another picture from the 1920s with hockey, Canada's hockey. And so these boys, what are they saying to each other? They're all looking at the camera. So somebody came by and took a photograph, obviously, because there they are in a photograph. Are the boys saying, is this going to be printed in the Alberta Western Daily? Or I'm glad it's not too cold today, but cold enough for the slough to be frozen. Or we're waiting for John to get here so we can start our hockey game. Where is John? I'll bet you he had to go and milk the cows, or whatever the students come up with their history, their knowledge. So take a breath. There are many, many other STEM and STEAM integration ideas, and there's really no limit when you get your imagination going. Here's just a couple more I want to show you before I close here and take some questions and comments. This is what was in my living room one Christmas. It's about 8 feet tall and 8 feet wide. It's a great big huge puppet that I made for a theater performing group. It's about a science project that went wrong. There's a person sitting inside that puppet, and the jaw goes up and down as the puppet talks. And there was a whole synthesizer and everything inside it. But this is just an example of how drama can be incorporated, and theater shows, puppet shows can be incorporated into STEM curriculum. This one is another project that I did, which links to electricity. So we have Lamp Lady, who has a light bulb on her nose, Battery Pac-Man, who has the couple of batteries on his back. He's the spoon with the red shirt, and then conduit connectors. And so what these puppets had to do was work in groups and choreograph a dance. And so whenever the puppets made a circle, of course, Lamp Lady's nose would light up. And then, of course, sometimes it wouldn't. And so the children were constantly needing to do corrections and make sure everything was all wired up properly. And they were very motivated to get Lamp Lady's nose to light up. And so they worked very hard at that. And then, of course, curriculum also includes dancing. So just choreographing that dance and going again through the shapes and the movements of that. So that was a fun project. They don't study electricity anymore in this new curriculum. They've actually moved into computer coding. So I have to come up with a new workshop for that. Whenever we're making puppets, we talk about proportions. And so we have quite a lot of math going on there with different fractions and proportions there. And showing children that their fingertips their arms need to be long enough so that they reach halfway down between their waist and their knees. We're as tall as we are as tall as our hand span. So these little fun facts that kids can know and actually do come into play when they're making a puppet. If you have a tiny little arm, you cannot scratch the top of your head, and so you can't do the actions that you might want to do. And here are just a few more projects. We have Vietnamese water puppets that teach about buoyancy, boats and buoyancy. Story about that. I had some grade 2 children who were making these bird puppets, and they were really getting into it. And the teacher had great big barrels of water, and the kids were basically dunking themselves and the puppets into the water and having a great time. And what was really sweet was that there was a couple of children from Sudan that had just arrived in Canada, and they'd gone swimming at the swimming pool, but they were scared stiff of the water, and so they didn't participate in the swimming activities, the swimming lessons. But then when we got the Vietnamese water puppets out, they really loved dunking their puppets. And so they kind of got a little bit more happy with water, which was pretty fun to see. The feathers, by the way, actually do come from a chicken, and so they quite stink when they get wet. They really are real chicken feathers that have been dyed. Noisy puppets, so we have sound and rhythm. These puppets are filled with beans or seeds or whatever, so you can make patterns of music with them. And they are very good in that Tintamari workshop as well. Pulp paper mache, we've done animal life cycles and systems. That's definitely part of the new curriculum where everyone needs to know who eats who and how do they do it. And so we pulp up some paper in a blender with some glue, and I can go more into that later if anyone wants to know. It's lovely and fun and messy, and is a great way of making and modeling puppets on paper plates. And then I was in a Spanish school for a while, and they wanted to do some of their culture. So the Quetzal bird is a very traditional part of South America. And so we made these gorgeous big Quetzal birds and had a great big huge screen across the entire stage. And this is a flight of these birds and talking about the habitat and environment and culture of South America. So that is my presentation. I hope I didn't go too quickly and sort of breeze you past all of those ideas, but let's now stop the share and I'll see if we have some discussion to talk about or if you have anything else to add to this. Okay. So I see 3 questions here, which is fantastic, and please do add them in. I can only see the questions in the Q&A, by the way, everybody. So if you're putting your hand up, I can't see it. So maybe just write it up in the Q&R section there. So how many sessions or days do you give this project? Yes, it depends a little bit on the teacher's budgets, but and of course the length of the classes. So I generally tell people that I like to have 3 sessions that are 90 minutes each, and we sort of have introduction and beginning of the project in the first session, and some introduction to animation as well, to just sort of seed those ideas. In the second session, we dig into making the puppet. And of course, the children can often just carry on making forever and ever and ever. So you need to sort of tell them when the end is and when it's finished, even if it's not quite finished for them. And then in the third session is when we actually pull it all together. We do animation games and practicing with moving the puppet in just quick little things. And then they're off practicing with their friends. Oftentimes I leave the school and the teachers are going to follow up with the project, and they'll pull it all together and then have it for a parent sharing night or that kind of thing. If we have longer, then it's lovely, and I can take more time and relax a little bit more with the students and spend more time on details and writing and that kind of thing. But often there isn't the budget for that. And in the residency that I just finished, we were working in 45-minute periods, and that was just so tight for time. No, we'd get started and then the kids would have to clean up, and it was really hard to concentrate on just getting anything done in a 45-minute period. So that's not something I'm going to do again. So I think sort of an hour to 90 minutes and then several sessions would be optimal. I have another question here from Robin. Thanks, Robin. Yes, I have a STEAM puppet curriculum I've done. Gosh, I'd love to hear about that. And you did it for pre-K through 5th grade. Wow. Now my interest is piqued. Here we are. Thank you. It was very interesting. I love how you incorporate all the cross-curriculum elements. Yeah, thank you. Yes. I love to see how many I can actually pull together. And I really hope that I also sort of inspire the teachers so that they can think about how they can bring in what they know the students are learning Generally, when I start in a school, I will do a little bit of a survey to see what the teachers are teaching at the time when I'm there, because the curriculum, of course, does go over a whole year. And so I could be busy teaching something that they're not going to teach for a couple of months. So I try to make it fit whatever they're teaching at the time, which kind of means that you need to be sort of an expert in curriculum K through 6, all different subject areas at any one point. How did I pitch it? Because Robin says, because I find a lot of middle school teachers aren't so interested in incorporating this in their already busy curriculum. Yeah, well, I think definitely that's an issue. I mean, there's time and budget involved. And I think lots of times people think that this is an add-on, like it's an art after the fact kind of a thing. And so I think the more you can prove that you're embedding the curriculum in what you're doing, the better. I've also had that the art and drama and music teachers feel that you're replacing, or not they, the principals feel like they're replacing their art teachers. Oh, good, we don't need an art teacher because we're going to get this artist in to do a residency. And that is absolutely not right. We are not taking the place of art teachers. We need the kids to have the basic art abilities and drama abilities in order to actually build the lesson on top of that. So definitely don't want those principals thinking they don't need their specialist teachers. So we're sort of, again, we're taking the art stuff that the kids know, we're building and helping the curriculum that the teachers are already teaching. And it is very humbling to know that sometimes you're paid by the sales of a hot dog sale, you know, so and so ate so many hot dogs so that you could come in and do a puppet project just because the budgets are so tight. Anonymous, could I please elaborate on the sessions on habitats and environment with Quetzal birds, also animal life system with paper mache? How did I conceive these ideas? What are my reflections after the projects ended, especially on how the kids took it? Yes. Well, in order to even make a Quetzal bird, you have to know what it looks like. And then in order to figure out the background, you need to know where it lives. And then in order to create the story, the part of that project was about a group of tourists who were walking through the forest and they saw the Quetzal birds. And so we had the shadows of the children with their tourist binoculars and other accoutrements, backpacks and things like that. We had them walking over the screen as a projected person puppet. And so there was that part, and the children drew pictures of the habitat where the story took place. And so those were incorporated into the slideshow along with the beautiful backgrounds. And so the slideshow played as the children did their stories and showed the birds. So in order to just represent the backgrounds and in order to represent the story, they needed to know what they were talking about. A good example of this is the other day I had a child presenting a wolf from North America and just doing a simple little, well, what do you eat and what eats you? And the wolf said that he got eaten by lions and tigers. And so I had to remind the child that we were in North America and we do not have lions and tigers in North America. So the simplest little factoid can become a learning opportunity for the kids. You asked about the paper mache. Again, we're creating the animals. We're going to create a script, and we're going to probably have the animal present about what it eats and what it doesn't eat. And if we have animals that eat each other, then we'll we'll be acting those out. And so we can do it as a piece of nonfiction with the animals presenting. We can also have the animals tell the story from their point of view, again, with that direct and indirect information. I hope I'm answering your question. As far as what the teacher's outcome is, often, sadly, I don't know, because I leave the school and we don't get a chance to sort of talk after the fact to see how much the kids remember. But having said that, if I see the teachers later in just the community, because Calgary has 1.5 million people, so we don't run into each other very often. But if I do, then often, if I see the kids, often they will say, "I remember you were doing these puppets," and I kind of think that shows that they do remember, and they're very engaged as they work, except for the ones that aren't. But puppetry isn't for everybody. But the amount of engagement that they have through the class, I think, talks about how the children see it. Robin, yes, you need my contact information. Absolutely. I guess I will type an answer so everybody has my contact information. I'll give you my direct email. It's on our website as well. I shouldn't be hard to find. I'm really trying not to be hard to find because we are trying to get our Puppet Power conference out to the world so that people can join in online or maybe even come to Calgary as part of the Unima Passport program, because we are part of that, one of the festivals that's part of it, and offering four nights of accommodation plus the free conference. There's a little product placement there. Does anyone else have any more questions or comments? Because I am very eager to hear your feedback as well, as if you've seen anything in your own life that has worked or not worked. Sadly, with this webinar, we can't seem to open it up for participants to talk live, and I can't see you, so I'm just imagining you. Thank you, Michael, for your comment. I'm glad you found it helpful. Absolutely. And again, this is recorded, so if people need to go back to one of my really quick ideas, then definitely that. And our website, I could put our website. Our website is wppuppet.com. Don't forget, there's 4 P's in that address. Mary Nagler, I had a teacher send me after a short puppet styles presentation. Oh, I had thank you notes, and I could see what they had absorbed. That was great. Yeah, when the kids write you letters, you can really see what they did notice, and it's amazing because sometimes they'll draw you a picture of something you didn't even know was part of it. Particularly after a show, you'll see that you see that they saw something and then, oh, I didn't know I did that. So yeah, whenever you can get that teacher feedback. We do have a survey form that we send out to teachers, but it is like pulling teeth. It's very difficult to get them to find the time to fill out the survey. So, but the children, yeah, when they do pictures for you, it's really fun. Okay, how are we now? I think we are at our time, are we not?
Yes, and I see Emmanuel says that it's also possible to raise hand and talk. So if anybody would like to talk, try this, raise hand, and we will hear you. If there are more comments, questions, anything. Wendy, I especially liked your at the beginning when you were talking about decomposing and the puppets and carrots and everything. This is the first time I hear about. This is very original way to face the question of death, which is still a taboo, and the children approach it in quite an original way. I like that very much. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, the whole vegetable puppet is one of my favorite lessons.
Mm,
It's I don't always know how the teachers take it further because I'm usually at we've done our puppets, we've done our games, we've done our presentations, and I really appreciate if teachers take it further. But yeah, most of the schools, if it's not winter time, they have got a garden of some kind out in the schoolyards, and so they can go out and bury their puppets.
mm.
Yeah. Um, there's more lesson ideas on my website. And Livia, as I said, this presentation propelled me into getting more things together. So what I really want to do this summer is to try to archive all of these ideas into lesson plans or project plans that I can then put up on our website for people to use. Um, there's just so many different ideas, and I want them to be accessible to people to just promote how puppets can be integrated into regular curriculum. So that is my plan. So stand by. We'll see if it happens.
Mhm. Very good. And thank you very much. Yes, this is very important. Puppets are wonderful. Every day I learn something new. What puppets can do. Yes, so that's really great that you are sharing all your knowledge and experience. And to anybody people who are interested in things, and if you do not know, if you have more questions about puppets in education, so visit the NIMA website and go to the site of the EDT Commission. You can write to us, and we can give you contacts, ideas, and so on.
Anyone who wants to talk to me too, you have my email, and I would certainly welcome anyone getting in touch with me about questions about this or questions about our Puppet Power conference and how you can be part of it or how you can attend. We are doing that call for proposals for puppetry used to see the tangled subject of immigration through the puppetry lens. We're also doing a call for videos. Please do reach out on that as well. Look, oh my goodness. This is usually how I look with my hair standing on end because the classes are really excited when you're in the classroom. All that children excitement.
Would you like to say something more about the Power Conference?
Puppet Power Conference? Oh, wow. Yes. Well, it is a biennial conference slash festival of ideas. And we every year we every couple of years we look at a different theme through the lens of puppetry. So in the past we have looked at literacy and multiculturalism. We've looked at puppets as agents of social change. We've had existentialism, materialism. So we look at different themes. And for me, it's a real education every time as I delve into this subject to see what it's about. And we have live, it's a hybrid festival. So it's live and it's online. So portions of both. And then there's post recordings as well that we'll make available for people. So we have performance to we can showcase puppetry being used in a performance, and then we have presentations, and from people around the world doing amazing things. We actually are housing at this time. We just make it really difficult for ourselves because we find a different venue every time that fits with our theme. So this year it's at the Calgary Center for Newcomers, and they are serving over 55,000 new Calgarians every year, which is an amazing statistic. But as I said, many people probably don't realize that Calgary is at about 1.7 million people, which is big enough. And many of them are new Canadians. And of course, immigration is a particularly political subject at this point. So we are really interested in what people are doing around the world and hoping that we can bring insight to people in Calgary on on how to use puppets and how to talk about immigration. So that's my pitch.
Yeah, thank you. Go back to Q&A.
Yeah, we've got a couple more here. How can I know more about the project of Baxter and Bird? And M. Bianiok, thank you for coming. And you had to leave earlier. Actually, now I don't know when we end, so I'll just keep talking. But Akshita, how can I know more about the project Baxter and Bird? It's on our website. The backstory is that during COVID, I was creating a show about this bird called Bird and a mouse called Baxter, and I was going to perform it live, but I ended up making a movie. So it's about a 40-minute movie about these two characters and how they end up learning that in order to achieve their wishes, their goals, they have to help each other. So Bird has lost her song because of something that Mouse did. And Baxter the mouse, when he meets Bird, he learns that he realizes that he wants to fly. And so the two of them have all sorts of misadventures through this time and end up with the idea that in order to know themselves, they need to help each other. And that's a Gandhi quote. So what we did was we filmed and edited this movie using green screen, which was, and it's tabletop puppets, so it's quite tricky to do that in green screen. And then, so this whole movie is out there. I'm trying to pitch different festivals to play the movie. But what we did as well is we divided it into 7 different chapters, and we created it as an online on-demand program on our website. And so you can buy the program and you get the different chapters, you get 7 different puppet projects with all the instructions that you need for those projects. You get discussion questions for 2 different age levels, younger and older students, all the behind the scenes of how we created this. And that's all part of that on-demand program. We recently made the first chapter for free so people can sort of test it out. And then the 6 other chapters, if you want to buy the whole program, it's $55 Canadian. So it's one of our hopes to make the project accessible to people and create a sort of an on-demand curriculum or listing of different things that people can take as an on-demand in an on-demand way. They can just do it online because we're really trying to reach an international audience with our projects. We also have, for the View from the Inside program, which is another of our programs, we have a View Facilitator training course that people can take in order to learn how to teach this program called View from the Inside. And that is also on our website. The link to that is also on our website. And I think it is also about $50 Canadian. And this is an award-winning program to use to promote positive mental wellness. And so it's a really special program. And I'm so pleased to be able to offer it to people so that we can get it out again to more people. So we're very busy. We've got lots of different things that we do.
That's great. Okay, so some people are leaving. If there are no more questions or comments, we can finish for today. You gave us a lot to think about. We learned a lot. Thank you. Thank you especially for sharing everything on your website. Thank you, everybody, for attending this webinar. We'll see. I hope they will go on. We'll see what happens after the Congress. I hope they will go on. And okay, well, have a nice day, evening, night.
I had a question, Olivia.
Yeah.
Do you need people to, do you need any sort of feedback or surveys to make a case to somebody to continue to do these webinars? Because I think they're wonderful as well. Do you need us to do a write in something or something to make that case to continue them, or what's the situation there?
Well,